Hi everyone, welcome to I'm Fine. I'm so happy that you guys stayed with me in this journey till now. And this is our very last episode. And we have with us a very special guest for this episode, Ms. Devika, who's also a counseling psychologist with TMC, who's a board member. Devika, thank you so much for making time today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Prati. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure to work with you as well. So today I have an episode which is very close to my heart. It's about how depression and anxiety manifests itself in relationships and how we can take care of one another. So I will dive into the questions over here for now. So the first question is, what are the signs that somebody is depressed, and what are the signs that somebody is anxious or has anxiety?
Okay, so understood. So when we talk about depression, right? There's this triad of features in which there is hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. These are the three major features of depression, right? So if anyone's going through depression, they might have even either one or all three of these features or symptoms. Other than this, there is a lack of interest in the activities which they used to enjoy earlier, but they're not enjoying that now. There is a lack of energy severely. There is either increased or decreased sleep or appetite, lack of self-esteem, you know, constant mood swings, maybe. So all of these are the signs and symptoms of depression. Whereas in anxiety, there is constant overthinking and worry attached. That something might go wrong, or you're always at alert. So other than that, there is low self-esteem and anxiety as well. And what happens is that the person is always worried about what is going to happen in the future, right? The things which have not happened yet, and the things which they feel that are out of their control. So a lot of the things which are even in their control might seem as if they're not in their control, and they might lose the confidence to attend to those particular issues in their everyday lives as well, right? So there is constant overthinking, as I mentioned. There are negative automatic thoughts, which are extremely common in people with who have anxiety and depression as well, right? So these negative automatic thoughts also increase your anxiety to a significant level. And there's something called the cognitive triangle, which basically states that your thoughts directly affect your emotions, or basically how you're feeling, and your emotions and your feelings directly impact how you're behaving, or your actions which you carry. And the behavior and actions then again have a direct impact on your thoughts. They lead to another thought which is negative in nature mostly, right? So this is basically the cognitive triangle. And in this, I mean, the emotions can also, the way you're feeling can also determine your thoughts and your actions. So it's basically, it can go either clockwise or anti-clockwise, or mix and match, right? But the summary of it is that your thoughts, behaviors, and actions are closely, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are closely linked. And it can have a major impact on your mood and how you carry forward the rest of the day, or the decision making which you're about to do. We've discussed what depressive traits and features look like. But when it comes to anxiety, there are a few additions to it as well. So, for example, lack of self-esteem is there in depressive people, but it is there in most of the people who face anxiety as well. There's lack of confidence. They're always constantly worried about the future. What will happen in the future? What if their plans do not go well? The what if questions are a lot, right? So they're basically worried about. They're also worried about what other people might perceive, or what they might think of them, right? So there are a lot of cognitive errors as well which are involved here. So cognitive errors are, I mean, there's a list of cognitive errors which are there, but the most prominent ones are jumping to conclusions. So people with anxiety are just ready to jump to conclusions, and which without any evidence or any proof of that particular thing happening, right? In the current scenario as well. For example, if a friend texts them that I'm sorry, I will not be able to make it today, and I'll not be able to meet you basically for dinner because I'm busy, right? So they might start overthinking and think that, okay, that person might not like me, which is why they're not showing up and they're not ready to meet me, right? So this is basically jumping to conclusions, and it's very common, extremely common. People who do not even have anxiety go through have cognitive errors, but people with anxiety have, I mean, predominantly have these cognitive errors. So that is that, yes. And then there's mental filtering as well. They focus more on the negatives and less on the positives, or they start disqualifying the positives. They say that, okay, the positives might be there, but we will focus more on the negatives because they
Negative
are more
possibilities
important.
like look bigger to them.
Exactly, exactly. So that there is catastrophization as well, right? That they're making, in reality, the situation might be this big, but then they start overthinking about it, and in their heads, it keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that is that as well. Yeah. And I mean, with respect to physical symptoms, there is breathlessness, there is increased heart rate, there's sweating, fidgeting a lot, you know. So yeah, all of these are the physical symptoms for anxiety.
Okay. So the next question is, um, what would be an example of a healthier thought pattern versus to someone who is anxious or depressed if they're faced with the same situation? For example, if they're having an exam that's coming up, and
Yes.
what would their thought patterns be like, and what is the healthier one instead of how it should be?
Okay. So for an anxious person, they'll think that I just have to do well in these exams. If I don't, then it'll be the end of the world. It'll be the end of my career. I'll never be good enough. I'll be a complete failure, right? So all of these thoughts which will be there. However, a healthier thought pattern would be, all right, I'm feeling anxious towards this particular thing, and I need to do something about it. I need to either make like a proper structured study routine and study properly, and then I'll achieve it, right? So it is more solution focused rather than emotion focused or anxiety focused. So the
So,
healthier thought pattern will have more of solutions of how can we achieve that if we are feeling anxious or nervous about something.
so the healthier one has awareness and initiative to solve the situation.
Sorry, what?
The healthier thought pattern has awareness about the anxiety and initiative
Yeah.
to like solve the problem.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. They're more proactively looking towards working towards their goal or whatever the worry is about, right? So it is not as if healthy people do not worry about things, right? They might become anxious, but they're not prone to anxiety. There is a difference between the two about the extremes and the levels of anxiety which is there. So in healthier people, or not in healthier people, people with healthier thought patterns might have anxiety, but of lower intensity, and it might not be as frequent as people who are highly prone to anxiety and you are usually anxious.
All right. Uh, so how should someone begin coping with all these thoughts that are racing in their minds, which are
Yeah,
negative?
yeah. All right. So, Pradeep, most of them um, are a result of negative automatic thoughts, right? Most of the anxious thoughts are a byproduct of negative automatic thoughts. And these thoughts have a direct implication or impact on our emotions, and our emotions have a direct impact on our behaviors or on our actions, right? And then those behaviors and actions then again lead to another thought, which is negative in nature because the cycle is negative, right? So this is called the cognitive triangle. So here it becomes extremely important for us to address the thought which is there. The first thought which is there, initial thought, look for cognitive errors there because we need to change the nature of our thought pattern here from negative to either neutral or positive, right? So we focus on the thought there, and there is a list of cognitive errors which are there, which are basically errors in our thinking patterns. And these can, I mean, there are multiple of thought errors. For example, jumping to conclusions, overgeneralization, magnification or minimization of thought, right? Labeling, blaming, all of these are cognitive errors. So, for example, jumping to conclusions is something which people with anxiety are usually predominantly have, right? So, what they would do is they would think about these thoughts. So, for example, the thought can be that a friend of mine has texted me that I will not be able to make it tonight for the dinner, and because I'm busy. But the anxious person will think that, okay, this person might not like me. That's why she's not showing up for dinner. Right. So now here the person is basically jumping to a conclusion that the friend is not coming because they don't like him or her. Right. Whereas there's absolutely no proof or evidence for that. So here it becomes very important to target the thoughts and change the thought pattern here, the negative thought pattern here, so that the emotion or the feeling also changes and your behavior and actions also change. Right. So this is something, this is one of the best things to do, or the best course of action which can be taken by an anxious person to work on the thoughts which they have. Other than that, to decrease the overthinking, because overthinking is a lot, right? When it comes to anxiety. With respect to overthinking, breathing techniques help a lot. So, because you're too much into your head, at that point, you need to make a break, right? And it's just working you up. It is making you more and more anxious. So, breathing techniques like box breathing, diaphragmatic breathing help a lot. And taking deep breaths instead of shallow breaths is something which we should always aim for when we're feeling anxious. So these are also there. Other than that, mindfulness practices also help a lot because you are so occupied with your thoughts that you forget where you're sitting, or the connection with the environment and the people around you sort of breaks. Right. So here in this case, in order to get reconnected with your environment, we need to maybe do a grounding technique. So grounding technique is basically wherein you make use of all of your sense organs and indulge yourself. Indulge your senses into your current scenario or your environment. For example, you take 5 things which you can see, right? 5 things which you can see, and just observe the quality of one quality or feature of that particular object which you're seeing, right? Just in order to distract yourself or take your mind off of that particular thought and bring yourself in the present. So grounding techniques are also something which you can do, and just be mindful of, where you're sitting and what you're doing. Just being present in the moment is something which we should work towards as well.
Um, and when we're talking about anxiety, there are these two terms which I keep coming across in an interchangeable sense. Is there a difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack?
Okay. So see, anxiety attacks and panic attacks are something which, as you rightly said, that people use interchangeably, right? But panic attacks are more intense in nature as compared to anxiety attacks. So both in panic attacks and in anxiety attacks, you start breathing shallow breaths, right? There are shallow breaths. You have a sense of distress, and your heart rate also increases a lot. So in both of these attacks, these 3 symptoms are common. However, in panic attacks, you feel as if you feel there is a fear of death or just losing control, right? They're more intense in nature as compared to anxiety attacks. And panic attacks might happen without any trigger and unexpectedly. Whereas in an anxiety attack, there might be a buildup of a stressor which is already there or a trigger which is already there. So this is the major difference between the two.
Okay. All right. The next question is, as a person who is a friend of someone who's facing some sort of anxious thoughts, or like a family member, how can I help soothe their anxiety, like an immediate emotional first aid?
Right. So See, here it becomes very important for the person who's feeling anxious or depressed to feel comforted and to feel heard, right? So first and foremost is to indulge in active listening. It is very important for the other person to believe that they're talking to somebody who's not going to judge them and who's not going to intervene at every step, and they're just there to support them, right? So first and foremost thing to do is active listening. Second is comfort, right? Ask the person what do you need. Ask them what their needs are, and then probably do something. Because what we do is that we just start saying we don't know how to counsel others, or we don't know how to give that comfort to others. So we start just rambling or start talking about mentioning things which are very cliched, right? That everything's going to be fine. You just need to relax. Nothing is as wrong or as difficult as you think it is, and things like that, right? So we need to refrain from all of these things because the other person might or might not relate to them. And most of the times they will not relate to them because it does not make sense for them, because it's not that easy, right? There are multiple layers of their distress. So just at that point, you need to give them comfort. So you need to ask them what their needs are and move accordingly, move ahead accordingly. Other than that, you need to calm them as well. Uh, Here, again, breathing techniques help a lot. You can probably hug them as well, just to give them and provide them the warmth and safety which is required, right? So that is also something which you can do. Other than that, connectedness is very important. The other person needs to feel that they have some sort of social support, which is non-judgmental and safe for them. If the other person is not going through to therapy, then it is important for them to at least get that sort of an environment in the presence of a friend or a family member, right? So it's very important for them to feel safe and make sure that they're comfortable enough to talk to you about whatever comes to their mind, so that they are able to vent it out at least, because venting out also decreases a lot of stress. So these are the things which you can do for a friend or a family member who's going through anxiety. Um, and and also make sure that they do the things which they used to do. You can probably start doing activities together which both of you like and wish to do, and just go outdoors and show them like a wider perspective, like, right? Provide them with a wider perspective of that particular problem or the thought which is there.
Like
So all of
alternative
these things are important.
possibilities and things which are good, which would replace this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The next question is, there are these terms like solitude, loneliness, and introversion. How are
Yeah.
these terms going to affect depression? As in, if somebody is an introverted person, are they more likely to withdraw more and feel more depressed?
All right. So I'll tell you the difference between these three first, and then we can probably talk about the connection with depression. Yeah. When it comes to solitude, there is something, that is something which a person would like to do. That is something which a person would like to have. And that basically relieves them of the stress and connects them with themselves a little more, right? A person would want to be alone and do a thing which they would like to do just to feel a little better and regain their energy and things like that. For example, reading in solitude, or cooking for that matter, or just watching TV, right? Or just journaling. That is all part of the solitude which is there. You enjoy the things around you, the environment around you, as well as your internal thoughts. You reflect more. So solitude is something which people look for, they seek for when they are sort of tired or exhausted after after their social batteries die down. Nowadays, we like to call them the social battery. The phrase is very common, right? So solitude is something which you crave for then. Loneliness, on the other hand, is something in which a person might feel alone. They're not just alone, but they don't want to feel that way. They want some sort of social connect there, and social connect which is in sync with them or their personality, right? Or what they expect from others or others around them, basically, right? A person feels lonely when others are not meeting the expectations of their social connect. For example, you need some sort of support from a friend, but you're unable to get that support, right? And you're unable to get that support from anybody else as well. At that point, you might start feeling lonely. So that is loneliness in which you feel helpless. That all right, there aren't people around you who can help you out with this particular thing or give that sort of a support. So you need the support when you're lonely, but the support is not there, or you're unable to look at it or find it. That is loneliness, right? Now, introversion is something that you're prone to, something which drives by your personality as well, right? Which is driven by your personality as well. So, for example, if you're shy and if you're reserved, you would not like to interact with a lot of people at once, right? You would not want to open up with people a lot just after meeting them, say for like 10, 15 minutes or in the first meeting itself, right? But introversion also means that the bonds which you've created already with the limited set of people, those bonds are deep, right? So that is there. Now, in introversion, now if we talk about depression, right? In depression, loneliness is very prominent. A sense of loneliness is very much there because at that point you feel that the social support is not there, which is why you start feeling lonely. People cannot understand what I'm going through, and nobody is understanding what I'm going through because I've tried to explain it to them, right? Which is why you can't share the thought with others. And even if you do, the other people will not be able to understand that, which is why you start feeling lonely, which is why it is more prominent in depression. Solitude and depression are something which might or might not go together. Solitude is something completely different, entirely different. However, introversion, when we talk about introversion, because of the limited set of people, if those set of people are not available to you at a point, right? So as we're growing up, we firstly, it's difficult to make friends. Secondly, there are more and more responsibilities on you and on everyone else. So, which is why you start losing friends, right? You start losing connect with others. And when we talk about introversion, at that point, when you already have limited set of people with you, those people also start to get busy in their lives. So they're not completely available for you, right? At that point, when there is a social disconnect, you might feel depressed. I mean, there are like other aspects as well which are attached to that. It is not just loneliness which can cause depression, but multiple other things as well. But
The thing about introversion really surprised me because I thought people who are extroverted will like miss people around them and get depressed because of it more. But it's like it completely changed my perspective right now. So,
yeah.
in a quick way, if we have to capture the correlation between the three different terms and depression, how shall we correlate that?
All right. So I think the correlation will be the highest among loneliness and depression, and then a lesser intense correlation will be between introversion and depression. And I don't think there will be any correlation between solitude and depression.
Mm.
However, just to make that thing clear, that when it comes to introversion and extroversion, there are still a lot of things which are unclear, right? People who are extroverted might not necessarily be only extroverted. They might feel, shy and the need to be reserved at some point. So there are a lot of overlaps which happen there as well. However, if you're talking about introversion, then this is the This is my take on it.
Mm. Yeah, but I agree. I kind of feel like I'm an ambivert, somewhere in between introversion and extroversion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the overlap makes a lot of sense. The next question is, how does depression and anxiety manifest in a romantic relationship? Like, what are the symptoms that you could see that tells that, okay, this partner is depressed or anxious?
Okay. So, as I mentioned, firstly, the features of depression and anxiety, all of those features will be present in the relationship as well, right? So, in case of a depressed person, there will be continuous and constant, uh, you know, low mood and sadness, which will be there. So the sadness will be very much evident. There will be a lack of energy in the other partner. The ability to make decisions will basically be lacking at that point, and the depressed or anxious partner will be heavily dependent on their partner to make decisions. For example, if you want to go out to a restaurant to eat food, right? The depressed person might either not feel like just exploring the restaurant because they will not have that kind of energy or the motivation to do that. So they will probably rely on their partner to make that decision, right? So the decision making probably falls in the other partner's lap. So that is something which we can probably look at. When it comes to anxiety, it also depends whether the person is anxious about interpersonal relationships or not, right? Because depending on their past experiences, it just completely depends on what exactly is the anxious person anxious about. So is it interpersonal relationships, or is it generalized, or is it regarding their career, or their personal goals? It can basically vary from that. So there's no one particular definition of what that person might be anxious about when it comes to the relationship. However, the basic features and symptoms of anxiety can be seen in an anxious person. Overthinking, analyzing each situation with in depth, which does not even require that much analyzing, right? So yeah, these things are pretty much prominent when it comes to relationships. And anxious people might also, if they are anxious about the relationship, they also might be anxious about what their partner thinks of them, or what their partner's perception is like of them, or whatever they're doing. Do they agree with what I am doing, right? So things like that. Is this the correct choice which I've made or not? Will my partner support it in this, or support me in this or not? So everything of that sort. So that anxiety sort of manifests in the minor and major decisions which are to be made, and everyday functioning as well.
So does a person's attachment style, does it get afflicted by depression and anxiety? For example, if I'm a securely attached person, if I'm going through
Yeah.
depression, will I tend to display more of like a withdrawn attachment style? Or in case I'm a securely attached person again, if I have anxiety or relationship anxiety, will I display characteristics of an anxious attached person?
Okay, so that also completely depends on the phase which you're in and the intensity of depression or anxiety, if you have that, right? If you're a securely attached person, then that basically means that you're overall secure about the interpersonal relationships which you've had in the past as well, and the relationship which was shared by your natural caregivers, which mostly are the parents, right? We observe and we learn things. And the personality traits which are formed basically depending upon, firstly, the innate traits which are there, and things which we observe from others, right? What others are doing, and the environment where we've been nurtured in. So all of that also is a huge determinator of what kind of an attachment style you might have. So for example, if you have a secure attachment style, and if you're going through anxiety related to one particular thing, Once again, if you have anxiety related to the relationship and it's central to the person whom you're with, then probably yes. Then you might grow to have an anxious attachment style. But then again, it completely depends what exactly are you anxious about, the relationship or yourself or others, or if you're uh, insecure and anxious about some of your personal traits, then are those personal traits directly related to the relationship or not? For example, your weight, right, or your skin color, or the kind of education you've had till now, the kind of fluency you have in a certain language, maybe. So things of that sort. So it completely depends. But yes, and if it's just a phase, right? If it is a securely attached person, and if it's just an anxious stage for them or just like a short phase for them, then you might not grow into an anxious attachment style at all, because it's just a phase, it's short-lived, and you know how to reach the solution. It's just that it's taking you a little longer and you're feeling a little more anxious about it. So it is not necessary that you will grow to have an anxious attachment style there.
Mm. Um, Now I'm going to dive into just a little bit because I have another question now. So when we're talking
So,
about attachment styles, how will it, I mean, will the relationship not work if two people have two different attachment styles? Or is it navigatable?
um, that's actually a very good and interesting question. Um, so here, what happens is that every individual is different, right? If we don't talk just about the attachment styles and talk about personality as well, uh, then, for example, if one person has a narcissistic personality, right, or traits of narcissism, and the other person is heavily dependent, has a dependent personality, then that couple will work things out, because the narcissistic person would want to do things in a certain way and has clear intentions of how things are needed to be done, and the dependent personality is just going to depend on the other person to take all the decisions, which the narcissistic person is happy to take, right? So that relationship is bound to grow and to work well. However, if it is between two narcissistic people, then there's a possibility of a huge conflict happening there, right? Because both of them would want to put their interests forward and want to take things in a certain direction, which is based on their particular interest and to their liking, right? Now here, now connect this with the attachment style as well. Now, here, if your interests are basically getting conflicted, what you can do is, the only thing which can be done is that one of the partners will have to back down at some point. The adjustment needs to be made at that stage, right? When it comes to two people with different interests or exactly the same interests and is conflicting, at that point you start finding the middle ground to a few things, and start making adjustments based on what all are the negotiables and what all are the non-negotiables, right, for both of them. And that's it. I mean, one person will have to back down uh, at some point, and the other person will have to back down at the other point. That is how you bargain and take things forward. The only way to now coming back to the attachment styles, if one person is securely attached and the other person is has anxious attachment style, right? So in this case, the secure person needs to understand the needs of the other person, of the other partner. That all right, they are usually anxious and they're especially anxious about this relationship. So what all can I do? Right? There are patterns which are already formed in the relationship, and you know about those patterns. What all can you do? So in this case, whatever needs, whatever needs are being communicated by the anxious person or the partner needs to be taken into consideration, and you both need to work towards it together, right? If it is a non-negotiable for the secure person, then you need to discuss it with the other person. So here, communication becomes a key, the key to basically working around these relationships. In any sort of a relationship, communication is the key. right? If you want your relationship to grow, then you need to understand what your partner's needs are, and the only way that you know the needs are is communication, right? You make them understand that this is something which I can do to this particular extent, and this is something which I cannot do at all. So here the um, you know what are the hard no's and what are the things which are workable. Now it is up to you to understand and to analyze for yourself whether this person, whether this relationship will last in the long term or not. Because maybe something for the person which is a hard no might be a working point for the other person. They would want to change that particular point, right? So, for example, if one person likes to keep things clean, right, the surroundings clean, the room clean, and the other person thrives on clutter, right? That they really want their room to be cluttered, and it makes them productive even more. So, for this particular person who would like to take things, keep things clean, it's a hard no for them to have clutter around them. And for this person as well, um, it is something which can't be worked upon. So there's basically a conflict here. Now, if there are more things which are conflicting in nature, then that relationship might not work in the long term, because then there will be more negatives or more working points, and to what level will you work, right? Now, that completely depends on both the partners' motivations as well. To what level are we willing to change? So it is sort of dependent on that. Uh, so to sum it up, uh, people with different attachment styles can work together, but both of them will have to put equal amount of efforts, or some partners will have to put in a little more efforts. So it completely depends on their willingness and motivation to take things forward, and how much can they sacrifice and compromise on.
All right. So if I'm someone who's depressed or going through a depressive episode, what can I be mindful of to make sure that, I don't, you know, like it doesn't become too difficult for my partner?
All right, here, if you're aware that it is depression for sure, and firstly, it is important to understand the intensity of it. If it is a high intensity episode, then the first and foremost thing for you to do is calm down and move away from the situation, right? Because firstly, you need to collect your thoughts together, and then come back into the environment and with your partner. Or if you have major confusion regarding what's going on, what's not going on how to perceive a particular situation or a thing, because there's a lot of confusion there as well because of the social disconnect. You need to first collect your thoughts, move away from the environment, calm yourself down, collect your thoughts, then you tell your partner what your need is and where all are the problems coming in, right? Here you're asking for their support. Now it becomes, and what your question is aiming for is how can you support your partner, right? Knowing that I have depression. So here, see, it is great to feel that way, but realistically speaking, it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult because whatever we do is not going to be long lasting. If I feel that, okay, I've been a little difficult for my partner to be supported throughout this time, I'll probably take him out for dinner today, right? Because to his favorite restaurant, right? But that will happen once, and once you go there also for dinner, you might be quiet. So it might not be the happiest or the most interesting and happy occasion for your partner either, right? So the first and foremost thing is to get help. Get help external to your house or to your circle. So therapy here plays a vital role in order to make you understand how you can work things around, and basically work on the journey of recovery, right? From this particular situation, because firstly you need to be a little independent enough of your emotions, of your feelings, And emotional regulation is something very important which you need to do in order to support your partner, right? I mean, you need to have something in your cup to fill others' cups as well. So, right. So first and foremost thing is to take care of the situation at hand, and then you start supporting your partner. I understand that this might also, make you feel a little guilty that you're just taking support and you're not giving or providing support to the partner. But at that point, you need to understand that it is the need of the hour, right? If your partner is supporting you now, you get better, you take the necessary help, you get better, and then there will be enough time and ample of time to return the favor. Or not just favor, like just be there for your partner later on or and show them your support.
Mm. Um, so if somebody shares with me about suicidal thoughts, how do I support them? Like, because I've heard a lot of incorrect responses when I said something like that to people. So,
Okay.
how do I give them the right kind of
Again, it's a very important question. Thank you for asking that, because I don't think it's discussed enough, right? Suicide has always been a very touchy and sensitive topic, and people who feel suicidal or have suicidal ideation, they usually do not open up with others, right? They refrain from social engagements in the fear of judgment. Um, However, in this case, what can be done is that even if you want to open up with somebody and you are that friend, right? Your friend is opening up to you regarding suicidal ideation and thoughts. So at that point, it is important to understand that you cannot provide the complete support which your friend requires, right? You just can firstly be a good listener. So listen to what the troubles they are facing, what the issues are which they are facing. Because um, here it is very important to understand the intensity of their thoughts and the intensity of their intentions, right? So ask them whether this particular thought is intense or not. How many times have you gotten this particular thought? Have you planned, committing suicide or harming yourself in any way? Have you attempted it in the past or not? How close have you come to attempting it? Right? And if you've planned for it and attempted it in the past as well, but failed, and you're planning for it again, how will you do it? Right? And what are the things which are already there with you? So, for example, if somebody tells you that they're planning um, to basically, you know, slit their wrist, right? At that point, you ask them whether they have like sharp objects around them and have they prepared for it or not. Just to understand the intensity of what the other person is going through and the stage that they've reached, right? This clarity is very important for you to get. And no matter what intensity is, after you listen to all of this, you need to tell them firstly that you are there for support. You need to give them that comfort and reassurance that even if there's nobody else, you are there for them to hear, to listen, and support, and show them, give them a bit of hope of what all are the things which are going correctly in their lives. If there are a few things which are going correctly, you at least point those things to them, right? Just this will be our attempt to bring in some amount of hope. Even if it's not long lasting, you still do that, right? There's no harm in doing that. Other than that, once you've heard everything, you have to convince them that they need to either confide in one of their family members, and which and then help them get connected to a psychiatrist and a clinical psychologist, because that is what needs to be done. Firstly, if the intensity is very high, then you need to contact the helpline numbers which are there, right? If you do not know which psychiatrist to call or which hospital to go to, first and foremost thing is you contact the helpline, or you help them contact the helpline, and you give them a list of numbers which are there, just so that they also have it handy, right? In case things go worse. First and foremost is contacting the helplines. Second, if it's not that intense, then make them understand that therapy is extremely important. And with therapy, medicine is also extremely important here in this case, because this has reached to an extreme level, right, where only talk therapy might not work. So medicine is extremely important. So pharmacology, then pharmacotherapy, sorry, and uh, and therapy with a clinical psychologist and not a counseling psychologist. And they need social support at that point. So it's very important for you also to either be their emergency contact or have another emergency contact in the form of a family member, a person who lives close by and or with them. They need to be aware of what is going on in the person's mind, right? And just be there with them and keep a close eye on the activities which they are indulging in.
Yeah. Um, we touched upon the fact that, it gets difficult for them to open up if
Yes.
they're going through suicidal thoughts. Why is it difficult to open up? And would it be difficult even to open up to a therapist about it?
So, as we discussed, right, that hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness are the three major features and characteristics of depression, right? And when a person reaches that level of having suicidal ideation, it is a pretty extreme, it is a pretty extreme end of the spectrum. At that point, they might feel that nobody else can help them out here, or nobody, because they've already thought of everything else, right? That how can we work towards it? Okay, things are not working in our favor, so we'll just let go of this. Wherein the helplessness comes and hopelessness also comes. So the hope of getting help also decreases, which is why there's social isolation as well, and they disconnect from the society or from the people around them, which is why, because they are hopeless at that point, it becomes very difficult to trust the other person to provide them with hope, right? Or with any other help, because according to them, they've already done whatever they could. They're feeling exhausted at that point. They do not have the energy to work on anything else. And things just seem to be the worst already, and things which can't be worked upon. So that hope of making things better is not there, which is why they feel that opening up to another person might also not help them. And to top it all, they might talk to a person who might judge them, as you correctly said, right? That you've gotten very difficult or wrong responses from other people, which were extremely judgmental. So, which is why they might feel that they're not ready to open up. And it might take them
Because
a
of their
while to.
experiences from people like that.
Exactly, yeah. That can be one of the reasons, yes. And with respect to therapy as well, they might not open up in the first session, but then again, there are individual differences and, completely depends on person to person. Some people might start, I mean, when they come for therapy session, they might start crying and they don't even know where to start from, right? So they might not get to the point at that time about the suicidal ideation, but they'll talk about everything else, and the suicidal ideation or the thoughts might come in at a later stage, because it's not something which is completely accepted by the society, um, or the society does not know what to do with such information. So that thing is there, but once the person is um, gains some sort of confidence in therapy and the therapist, they open, and I mean, then it becomes easier for them to open up and talk about their struggles.
Why is it more prevalent these days for us to become isolated very easily and become, very lonely? And how can we work around that to make meaningful, good relationships in life?
uh okay, so there is a major change in everyone's lifestyle, right? When we think of like 20 years ago and now, there's a major shift in the lifestyle of people. We are more prone to social media. We are more prone to technology now. Um, People are more self-centered a little, or trying to work on their personal goals rather than support others or provide such support or to that level for others because of the increased competition, the increased expectations from yourself and from the society, to look a certain way. I mean, increased expectations coming from social media as well, right? And convenience. I mean, you have everything at home, right? If you want food, you can just order it. If you want to watch a movie, there's OTT. You want to play games, there are computers. You want to get in touch with anybody, there's Zoom, there's Instagram, there's everything else, right? Video calling platforms and everything else. So even especially after the pandemic, we feel that we do not want to step out of the house. A lot of people still do, which is why the social connect also has decreased a lot. And because of the pandemic, there's still a lot of confusion in people's head, people's minds that, what exactly are we supposed to do? How often are we supposed to go out? How often is it okay to meet a certain friend in a week? Is it okay to meet them twice a week like we used to do before the pandemic, or have things changed? In addition to that, we've also grown up through the pandemic, right? People who were 22 before the pandemic are now 25 or 26 years old, right? And that is also a major shift because around 22, you're still a little carefree. You're a student at that point, most likely, right? And you're still dependent on your parents. But when you turn 26, I mean, right after the pandemic, when you've turned 26, there are more responsibilities on you. There are more financial responsibilities on you, familial responsibilities on you. People are expecting you to get married, to have babies. So, you know, the responsibilities have also overwhelmed us a lot. There's a lot of confusion here, and which is why we keep ourselves isolated because we feel the most comfortable with our own selves because we know what we expect from ourselves mostly, and we know the kind of comfort which we can provide ourselves, right? So it's just easier for us to restrain ourselves to one particular room in your house and just be there. I mean, you're working as well from home. So now the quotient of loneliness has increased because you don't know what to expect from the other person. And and to what level is it okay to have those expectations, if it makes sense. So yes, people are now preferring to stay at home even though they're feeling lonely because of firstly the habit which has been created after the pandemic, and secondly there's a lot of ambivalence when it comes to stepping out and doing the regular things, the normal things which we used to do before the pandemic. So yes, and social media itself has basically make you a little away from people. uh, so that is that.
Okay. So this is the last question I have. What advice would you like to give to all the people out there who are struggling with either of the struggles that we spoke about? Like if we have to
Okay.
leave them with one advice, what would you like to do?
Okay. So I think there are three things to be taken care of most predominantly. So first is sleep, second is appetite, and third is exercise, physical activity. These three things have a direct impact on your mood and your emotion, right? So it's very important that you basically follow a sleep routine, a proper sleep routine. You get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day. Second is appetite. You need to have constant meals, I mean, frequent meals, and make sure that you're eating properly and that you're not going hungry, right? And that all the uh, nutritional
Yes.
requirement is being met, requirement, right? And third is physical activity. It is very, very important for us to just move our bodies around, right? you dance, you go for gymming, you go for aerobics, you play a sport, you do anything else. Firstly, uh, I mean, if you're prone to overthinking and you're feeling anxious, and there is a pent up ball of emotions, right? It helps in channelizing your energy in the correct way. You are letting go of that additional energy and additional pent up energy which you have. So exercising also is extremely important. It also helps you in sleeping better and helps a lot in emotional regulation, as I said. So these three are the top things which you need to take care of. Firstly, because these are the basics of maintaining a healthy routine. And a healthy routine basically means that emotional regulation is good and that you're able to cope up with your stresses effectively or in a healthy manner, right? So these three things are the things which you need to focus on majorly. Apart from that, your thoughts come into the picture. As we've discussed, look at the negative automatic thoughts and how prevalent are they. Look at the cognitive triangle, which we've talked about, the thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and look out for any cognitive errors which are there. I mean, you can either go for therapy, which will definitely be helpful, or if you don't want to go for therapy and you want to help yourself, then definitely you can, find a lot of resources online as well when it comes to thought challenging maybe, and just changing your thought patterns from negative to either neutral or positive, more adaptive thoughts, basically. So this is going to be my advice.
Yes, thank you so much for all your lovely insights and your advice. I hope we can, reach people who might be looking for resources and are struggling alone. And this is the end of the season. Thank you all for watching thus far. Take care of one another and drink plenty of water. Bye.